This is What a week.
What a week. PoliTricks.
Welcome to another episode of WOW What a Week, where we cut through the noise and face the tough questions. Surnames in the news this week: Mthethwa, Malema, Madlanga, Kabila, Muilwa. Please welcome Botsang Muilwa. What's up, my dude?
Good morning, Fresh. My followers and viewers. I'm okay, my brother.
Loving your EFF red.
Aye, man, this is not EFF red. This is more of a ruby wine red. It's not the...
Or is it communist red?
Then I'm not even a communist.
Or Kosatu red?
Let's leave it red. Let's leave it there.
In fact, there's a lot to be read today.
Yeah.
And we're going to start reading first into what's happening in Paris.
Yes, sir.
Unfortunate passing of Ambassador Mthethwa.
Yes.
And already the conspiracy theorists are out. Did he jump? Was he pushed? Had he already been deceased before a body was placed? There's a phone that pinged in a park that's notorious. Where's Allah?
As people would say, there's just a lot. But yeah, sadly, may the soul of Ambassador Mthethwa rest in peace. I know there's not yet the burial, but it's challenging times for South Africa at the moment. Especially that people are already talking about the links to the Madlanga Commission because It was mentioned there. I doubt it cannot be because of that.
I was going to say to you, what was implied and claimed about him, Madlanga Commission, is not anything I don't think anyone would want to be silenced about or want to kill themselves about.
No, not at all.
I don't believe.
Not at all. I think it's people, speculations that are very wrong. It's very low. And anyway, if you recall, for those who didn't know, it is when he was the Minister of Police, Lieutenant General Nkosinathi was the acting Commissioner of Police. And at that time, the police wanted to charge Mr. Richard Ndluli internally on a disciplinary hearing, and as well as in court for a criminal, offense, and for, using money or the stash fund of what do you call
Crime
it?
intelligence.
Crime intelligence.
Yes, sir.
And at that time, what Lieutenant General Nkosinathi is saying is that at the time Minister Mthethwa used his political power to intervene so that he must not charge and prosecute Ndluli. And Nkosinathi refused, and Ndluli was charged and prosecuted, we know. So even if people say Minister Mthethwa at that time interfered with administrative work of the police, his interference did not work.
Yeah.
So there was no wrongdoing eventually. It was just mentioned. But I don't think that is the case, Fresh. I at the beginning, me and you, we spoke a lot during the week, even on the radio, how I am one of the people who, based on what the French authorities released and said about text messages to the spouse, who's also based in Paris. Based on that, I believe that it was suicide, but not because of the Ndluli. It could have been for any other thing. However, with the pieces being
Do you
combined,
think it's a suicide or a staged suicide?
Somebody actually taught me a way that they call it an organized suicide.
Yes.
Yes, a stage organized, manufactured suicide is another terminology being used. I think it's a manufactured suicide. And there's various aspects that I try to piece up together. And I spoke to a former colleague who's stationed in Paris to ask what is actually going on. I thought the park that is being mentioned, I've been there, I've been in that hotel, I've been in that park. I thought it was long closed or managed by the authorities in France. And this colleague told me that no, it's still existing. There's notorious park where the first thing that happened on Monday, the French authorities said the telephone of the late ambassador was pinned there. So the last place it was. And on Wednesday, it was found there, actually, the telephone itself. And from that park to that hotel, it's quite a distance. It's not adjacent to each other. So that is the challenge that we are facing. But I think what will bring closure or more, sense to this whole thing is the footage of the hotel.
Yes.
That's the most important piece of information.
But given so far what we know, and based on how far people are willing to go to cover their tracks, do you think there will be footage?
That's the thing. If the hotel can come up and say there is no footage, then we will know. For me, that will definitely confirm that there's a third party involved. Why would? First of all, this is a very prime hotel.
Yes.
And it's a 4-star hotel, in the middle of Paris, that is frequented by dignitaries, very important people. It has housed very important people before. There's no way they will compromise on the footage, especially from reception. Okay, at the reception, many people come in. But the elevator and the corridor of the hotel room, there's always cameras.
Yes.
And it's not one camera. So they can't say all those cameras that they don't show anything at that time. That's one element. But the story that the locked window, the safety lock of the window was destroyed with a scissor, I don't buy that story. Those safety locks are very, very strong, iron rods sometimes, that you will need a crowbar or something much more stronger to can destroy that. So I don't buy that story, but it's a wait-and-see situation. Probably when this goes on air, the French would have given us something, on what is actually going on. We still don't know what was in the message to the spouse.
No, but I think we're told that the message to the spouse alluded to the fact that I'm thinking of unaliving myself and I'm sorry.
Yes. You see, Fresh, those messages of what we call it, people committing suicide or attempting or threatening to, in books I've read and stories I've listened to, they also differ from message to message. Somebody may write a different message which will mean something to another person, but it did allude to that fact. That's why the French authorities, issued a statement and said they released the canine to look for the body where the phone was last pinned, but also they unleashed the suicide unit instead of the normal diplomatic protection unit. They sent out the suicide unit. So it's clear to me that actually they were looking for somebody who may have committed suicide or is in the process of committing suicide. That's why you send the suicide unit, because it has security, it has what psychologists, negotiators and things like that. And that's why they did that.
But there's also speculation about whether or not a body was placed there after either being poisoned or gassed or denied of oxygen.
Yes.
How do we verify such? Because those are things doing the rounds on social media and even in very highly influential WhatsApp groups.
Yeah.
Yes.
The only way to can verify it is autopsy report. If you conduct an autopsy, it will tell. And also, if a person had fallen from that roof or so, I was speaking to some guys who are doctors. They will say the splash of blood, it will show that it was put there, or there's blood, splashed. How a person was found lying down. The other news that has come up is that he was found on the deck, because it's on a deck of the hotel room. It was not on the normal ground by a security guard. But what about the cameras in there? Because, hotels, they will even have in their parameters, the cameras of the parameters that could have picked up when the person fell.
Yes.
And when did they pick up? And also, the when is going to be the most important part. When was this picked up? When did the body fall? When was it picked up? But I think it may have been pushed from the 22nd floor of the building. But I'm certainly having, and it's my observation, suspicion, that there's a third party involved. I'm not buying the story that Ambassador Mthethwa committed suicide. But yeah, it's a wait-and-see situation.
In terms of his legacy, given the 30 years he's been in government, I mean, he started young. He was in his 30s. I think he was one of the first youth in parliament for the ANC.
Yes.
What kind of legacy do you think he'll be remembered for? Because, unfortunately or fortunately, because we live in a social media era, people are not going to hold back on their crits, on their reservations, or on their honest feelings. the world of arts and culture is still talking about what he might have done or not done for people in arts and culture. What do you think his lasting legacy will be?
First, there's quite a lot. Pardon me. First of all, being one of the youngest I think he's a former Secretary General of the ANC Youth League, whether national or in the provincial. But to start at that young age in Parliament and go to occupy 2 or 3 ministries, successfully, so I think it shows the caliber of a person that he was. But it doesn't take, as you correctly say, it doesn't take away from people that as a political office bearer or a public figure, there'll always be critics, especially on things that, how do I say it, on things that were affected people negatively. You mentioned when he was at arts and culture,
yes,
a lot of artists cried actually. People were not happy. I think, and people say we should not talk bad of the dead, but I'm talking bad about him. We're talking negative things that may have or that have happened when he was in a certain portfolio.
Sure.
Like a lot of artists, I vividly remember under his, watch at sports and arts and culture, they complained a lot that he was, unreachable. He was aloof. He did not give support where it was expected. I recall the incident of the pole or the flag, whatever, that he wanted to put in a museum or at the national whatever center for about 22 million rands and things like that. So there will be negative things, but some people who have worked with him, they will tell you that he was actually a gentle giant person that, not easily approachable, but it was probably his character.
Yes.
He didn't stay long in the police, and police are now seen with bigger problems. But I think, in government, we will judge ANC ministers the way the ANC performed throughout the years, and I will not, take him out alone and, individualize him and single him out. But people will always talk. People will bring negative things about how politicians conducted themselves while they were in the office. At least what I know, and that is not kind, is that former Minister Mthethwa, or Ambassador Mthethwa, appeared, or his name appeared in almost every commission of inquiry that I have followed in South Africa, whether it's Madlanga, whether it's the ARMS one, and any other, his name was always there. Then somebody may say probably his name was there because if you don't do anything, your name will not there. So if you are employed or you are appointed on a position and there's controversy in those departments, obviously your name will be there. But that's one of the things that I recall vividly, how his name came up over and over in some of this commission of inquiry. But yeah, what can one say? And there's a lot of speculations. Where was the driver? Where was the bodyguard? Where was the security? And one has to have an understanding of how the diplomatic community works to do that. Because
so that's the one thing that a lot of people are saying, where was the security detail? Almost forgetting that he was an ambassador, not a minister.
Not a minister, yes.
Yeah.
And being an ambassador, in all, I only know of American embassies, and they are ambassadors to some extent, the British as well. They've got security personnel with them when they travel. But South African diplomatic service, our ambassadors do not have bodyguards or security personnel.
Sure.
Except obviously people who are serving at war-torn countries or where we are under a threat. And we are not under a threat from any particular country or group anywhere in the world. But obviously when there's a war in a country and security has to be upped. But at diplomatic missions, heads of missions or ambassadors are actually provided of the official vehicle, which will obviously be marked. It will have diplomatic number plates and an official chauffeur, a driver, who's a normal driver, is not a bodyguard. They are not even armed. And these drivers, they work normal office hours, 8 to 4 or 9 to 5, depending on which country are you in. If they have to work overtime or at night or on weekends, it's when there are official engagements of the ambassador. Understand? And I'm specifically stating official engagements. That's why ambassadors are allowed to drive themselves if they want to. If they want to go out privately, then they can take the official car and go out privately. But the chauffeur of the ambassador works normal hours, except when there's a program for the ambassador. If he has an event to attend, a meeting to attend, which is after hours or weekend, then the schedule will be prepared to say you are going to be working overtime.
Yes.
And that's why they don't go around with bodyguards. And that's why they live in diplomatic quarters.
Yes.
And the embassies or chancelleries are in diplomatic quarters, which are protected by the security personnel of that particular host country.
Okay. Absolutely. May his soul rest in peace.
Yes.
And may we find common ground eventually on his legacy. And may there be justice.
Yeah.
At the end of this drama. Speaking of justice, Julius Malema found guilty on 5 charges, weapons charges, as per the King Firearms Control Act. But a lot of people are very emotional about it. Mm-hmm. And one thing you got to love or hate about Juju is that he's got a cult following. And often whatever emotion Juju is feeling, his followers will follow suit.
Yeah.
But what does the law say?
Exactly. And first, I've said to many people, and I was engaging quite a number of people with this case before and now after. If we remove Juju out of this, Julius Malema aside, politics aside, and race aside, and I'll tell you why I bring the race issue. It is because the core accused was let go. He was not found guilty on anything. But if we look at what the law says, Julius Malema is indeed guilty of what he was charged for.
Sure.
Understand? And what do they call it? This charging of a firearm at a public place. It's a criminal offense. It's very clear. The act and the law is very clear on that. That you are going to argue with the law that, but it was a plastic or a toy or a replica gun. It was not. Actually, I read the act over and over.
Yes.
It even say pointing of a firearm and or discharging a firearm at a public place, even if it's a replica.
Yes.
Because the victim or the other person on the other side would not know.
Because I was going to say that one of the reasons that you're not allowed to simply pull out your gun is because then it forces a change in behavior of the other person. And if I don't know that it's a toy gun,
yes,
already that kicks in.
Yes.
That there's going to be a change of behavior of sorts. And I think that's one of the reasons that the legislation was amended and tightened.
Yes.
Because people would willy-nilly brandish a firearm.
Brandish the firearm.
If what they say, Botsang, I'm like, Botsang, let's talk. And I put my firearm here. That's illegal. You can't do that.
And people don't know that actually, even if you have a licensed firearm, it has to be concealed.
Yes.
With the new law, it must be in a pouch, a safety pouch if it's not concealed, but it has to be concealed, and it's a requirement. Now, brandishing it, discharging it in a public place, it is a criminal offense. And we are not talking about Julius Malema's case. We are talking about what the law prescribes. Now, the other part is it was not his firearm. It was not licensed to him. So you were in possession of a firearm illegally.
Sure.
Understand? Whether it's your friend or your bodyguard who gave it to you, you are not supposed to be having it. And also, Fresh, the court, what they did in this matter, which the defense failed to do. For example, the defense failed to bring the toy gun, or then they said it was a toy. They failed to bring it to come and substantiate and prove their case. While the state had the cartridges that were picked up. You see, that's another important thing. Who picked up those cartridges at an EFF rally and gave them to the authorities or to AfriForum? They had the cartridges, and then they called witnesses, expert witnesses, who looked at the video and confirmed from what they looked at that can never be a toy gun. Now, it is not the magistrate or the judge or the presiding officer. It is the expert. And they called two who come and say that firearm that was fired at that place at this hour, and looking at minutes and the sound, looking at the movement of the firearm and all those things, it is indeed a true firearm. And I think their defense to say it was a toy was a very weak defense.
Sure.
And now why people are lamenting in Julius's case is that the co-accused, who is his bodyguard of many years, that guy has been, Adrian Snyman has been Julius Malema's bodyguard from the youth league time. He comes with him from the time he was a youth league.
Yes.
Actually, I happen to have seen a picture of them together during the week when he was still at youth league. He was a tiny little boy, slender and all that. Now they say it's not fair. It's a racial thing. That's what Julius supporters are saying. Why this guy was not found guilty. And I said, the problem is, what do we know what was he charged for?
Yes.
So in preparing for the show, I went to read what was he was charged on the same charges as Julius.
But how when Snyman never discharged a firearm? So you can't group them under one charge when their transgressions are not the same.
Exactly.
It doesn't make sense.
It makes sense to me.
Because surely Snyman should have been charged for reckless and negligent handling of a firearm.
Yes, he was supposed to be charged for that.
Because how does it end up in someone else's hands?
Yeah.
Because I think one of the things the court said was that Snyman, who was accused of handing the firearm to Malema, but there was he was acquitted because the state did not prove the case against Snyman beyond reasonable doubt. And the court accepted that the state failed to prove that Snyman handed over a loaded firearm to Malema. And during closing arguments, the state argued that there was no direct witness testimony who saw Snyman giving the firearm to Malema.
Again, you see what I'm saying?
Yes.
Exactly the last statement. There was no witness testimony.
Sure.
The court decides on what is in front of
So it was the wrong charges for Snyman?
It was the wrong charges for Snyman. But I think the charges for Snyman, now that's where politics come in. I think they were deliberate that they should be wrong.
Yes.
This case was brought up by AfriForum.
Sure.
And other interested parties, okay? AfriForum, which is an Afrikaner racist white organization, it is not going to go and lay criminal charges against an Afrikaner boy.
Yes.
They're not going to do that. So they did it purposefully. And the state as well failed to realize when NPA, what do they call it? When NPA did these charges and completed these charges, they should have seen that the complaints of AfriForum to the police are not correct. The NPA had a responsibility to actually, because they are the state, they are representing the state, they are the prosecutors, they had a responsibility to actually craft the charges in a correct manner. So the NPA failed here in this instance to charge Snyman correctly.
Because there was no reasonable chance of Snyman being found guilty if he was being charged the same as Juju. There was no reasonable chance that he was found guilty.
Yes, he was not in possession of a firearm. He didn't discharge it in a public place. He was not reckless in discharging it. Although he was not possessing a firearm illegally, because that firearm in question, actually, not the toy one, in inverted commas, he is licensed to carry it. It is the firearm of the security company he works for. So he's got his PRISA certificate, you can carry it. But he was not carrying it at the time. And as the judgment says, nobody witnessed him or brought a testimony of him handing over the rifle to Julius Malema. And if people would have charged Snyman, and it carries minimum sentence of 5 years, minimum sentence. If somebody and the NPA and the witnesses were called in to say, but this firearm, it's registered in the name of, or on the day, he handed over to Julius. Here's the testimony, he had been charged for that. He was charged with the wrong charges, and that's why he was acquitted.
So even if Snyman was a black person, it would have been the same verdict.
It would have been the same verdict.
So it had nothing to do with the skin of his color.
No, there was nothing to do with the skin color. And like I said, people must go and check what was he charged for. And that is very, very crucial. Because the court cannot say, I am sentencing or I'm finding Snyman guilty for handing over the firearm to Julius Malema, when actually there is no charge before the court. The court decides on what is in front of the court, not what we as outsiders are speculating.
So basically you are saying stop being emotional. The court dealt with what was presented to the court.
In front of the court.
And the verdict is based purely on that and nothing else.
Purely on that. If there's anybody who thinks this was based on race, they must prove why it was based on race. Understand? Because I don't want to look at it that person is Julius's most trusted human being, if you think of it.
Sure.
He has been his bodyguard for over 20 years. You understand? So it's most trusted human being. It's not about race. It is not. It's about what happened during that day and what happened in court.
Do you think maybe Juju wasted an opportunity to win the court and everyone else over by standing up to say, you know what, we're celebrating, emotions were heightened, we were excitable, I was wrong to discharge a firearm into the air in celebration of our party's milestone. I will do better next time. I am willing to go for firearm safety training just so that I know better next time, and maybe even do community service by maybe doing, I don't know, workshops at schools.
Show remorse.
Show remorse and say, I'm sorry, can we negotiate a suspended sentence? Do you think this would have ended in week 1 and we keep it moving?
Once you walk into a court of law and you plead guilty and you apologize, this would have ended in that week. And what now would have been in the hands of the court was to go and look at what is the law prescribing in sentences, especially if the fact that you plead guilty does not mean you can't.
You're walking away. Doesn't mean you're walking
you can't walk away.
Yes.
However, I think the situation would have been different. And I'm basing it, because we are a violent country, that's why the Firearms Act has been changed so many times. They are very strict there. And I know in applying for, your own private license, one of the things is that safekeeping of the firearm.
Yes.
Safekeeping of the firearm. There is actually a subsection in the Act that talks about safe handling of firearms. You understand? But the court then will go and look and say, this person, number one, is showing remorse, is apologetic to the state. He didn't threaten anybody there. Yes, it's wrong what he did. Yes, it's against the law. But what does the law say in people who see wrong in themselves? The state would have been having that opportunity. Let me tell you, the Criminal Justice Act prescribes that the court would have found him guilty, sentenced him to whatever, maybe 5 years, suspended for 5 years, and hand him over to correctional services.
Yes.
Then you are put under what they call correctional supervision. Correctional services will go and look and say, this is Julius Malema. He's a public figure. He was not intending to offend anybody. He's showing remorse. Let's put him through some, psychological and training and help. The things that you are mentioning fresh to say, let him go and do some community work, or we are suspending his sentence based on the fact that he is not a threat to the society.
Yes.
And those are some of the options that would have come up if we would have pleaded guilty at the very beginning. They missed that opportunity.
Sure.
And at times I always tell people it is not good to fight a losing battle with the state and with the system. They like using the words in court. You are wasted the court's time. The court has wasted Julius's time as well, or the prosecuting authority, because this thing has been postponed for 5 years. This happened in 2018. But it's finally over. We know that it's not over. It's the beginning of the appeal. And people think also, there's another part that I want to correct the perception. People think now that Julius is going to appeal, they can bring reasons why the other one was not charged for handing over. You cannot. Appeal limits you to what was before the court. No new evidence.
So you can't bring new evidence.
Yes.
You can't bring new charges.
You can't bring new charges. You can start new charges. If you want to charge a snake man, somebody must go and open the case
and
charge
start a whole new process.
And start a different process from the appeal of Julius. Julius will appeal his case. We know this is South Africa. It may take another 17 years before it comes to an end.
If, let's say, Sneeman was recharged, it's a new charge sheet. Now you are being charged for your negligence in handling your firearm and not ensuring that either it's on your person or it's in your safe, or if you're handing it to someone else, you've made sure that there isn't even one up.
Yes.
Because those are all the safety
and it's
precautions.
A competent person who
and it's a competent person that's handling it. Could one argue that my principal took my firearm in the heat of the moment? Eventualis.
Yeah.
I had no idea that he was going to fire in the air.
Yeah.
One. And two, the power dynamic was such that even with my firearm training,
No, it was not going to work.
You can't argue.
You can't argue that because remember earlier on, I explained that the Act says if the firearm is on you and it's open, it's visible, it's not behind the jacket, it must be in a holster that is lockable.
But it's a semi-automatic.
Yeah,
If a rifle.
Yes, if it's a rifle,
Can't holster it.
yeah, you can use a holster, but the normal training, and I'm not an expert in that, but I know with the normal security people, it will normally have a belt that you, even if it's there, it must be on, you must secure that firearm.
It must be secure, yes.
It must be secured. The way you are holding it, it was not going to work. But let me tell you, even if people can try now to go and open charges against Adrian Snyman, let me tell you why it's not going to work. When you charge me for handing over my firearm to the next person, you must have that firearm to come and as evidence to say this is the firearm that Julius fired.
Okay.
And this is the firearm that is registered to Snyman. So that firearm must be before the court as part of evidence. And remember,
just like the toy gun.
Toy gun should have been before the court.
Yes.
Now remember, in Julius and Snyman's side, the firearm does not exist. What existed was the toy. So whoever is going to try and charge Snyman now is not going to fly because they will have to bring that firearm, compare the ballistics with those shells or cartridges that were picked up, and say this firearm released these cartridges. They are the ballistic reports, and therefore now we are charging Snyman. It should happen like that. But look, these people are friends. These people are comrades. I don't think Julius wants Snyman to go to jail for that.
Sure.
I don't think he's thinking along those lines.
Should he still appeal?
Should, it's another story fresh.
Would you appeal?
If I was in his position, I would, because we are faced with 15 years to jail.
Yeah.
I will try my level best to keep this thing running
so
forever.
you'd fight it regardless.
I'll fight it regardless. But also, it's not only jail. Remember, even if it can be a suspended sentence, and I don't know if the Act speaks of the suspended sentence, because I don't think Julius has a criminal record. It may be the first offense. But once you've got a criminal record or you are sentenced to prison for over 12 months without an option of a fine or suspended sentence, you can't be an MP. You can't be an MP. So
politics is over.
Politically, there's that
over.
element. It will be over. So I would, if I'm Julius, I would appeal it. I don't say he will win the case at the end. I don't see him winning the case at the end. But I will drag it for as long as possible. Because purely not because he did wrong or he was malicious or what, but he broke the law. And the law is the law.
Yeah.
And this is the law that the same Julius sits in parliament in a committee that writes that law.
Sure.
So he has to be one of the first people. And it's not only him. Many people are in jail today for pointing a firearm, throwing a firearm, or discharging a firearm in a public place. But because they are not famous people, we don't know about them.
Yes.
The law in South Africa takes such activities very seriously as criminal offenses. And you know, maybe the EFF people will bear with me today because I'm wearing red. They will not go into my throat thinking I'm criticizing. I want Julius to go to jail. I don't want Julius to go to jail. But I'm simply interpreting the law and explaining what happened in court and what the law says.
Let's go to the Madlanga Commission. Mthethwa has resigned.
Yes.
We have texts from runners. There's a sick witness. And obviously the conspiracy theory train is never late. It always arrives first.
Yeah.
And the minute we were told that Khumalo,
Yes, General Kumalo.
the General Khumalo was he showed up and was not feeling well and was taken ill. Obviously, they started because previously Ambassador Mthethwa was found dead in Paris. Now there's a witness, Okula.
Who's evil, yeah.
And people like joining dots, even where there are no dots.
No, there's no dots there. There's no dots. Look, I think there's nothing in me that makes me believe that General Khumalo is ill. Or went ill. I mean, if he was, he would have not come. But if a person says I'm ill, and the commissioner himself, Judge Madlanga, said no, he was not. We saw him; he was not feeling well, and we said
no. But I get it. Not feeling well could be because something was slipped into your drink or your water, and you know, often if you're a witness at such a high octane event, you know not to just willy nilly drink or eat anything.
Yeah, like I said the other day, I was looking at him sipping Coke there, having water. That was, I don't know whether he got them there or he brought it, but I personally know that, well, he has made it public. Nkosinathi does not drink, takes food and drinks from public places or work or all those things. And look, Fresh, I don't think there's anything about. I think these people who are witnesses, they're senior police officials. They will be extra careful, especially with the people they are dealing with.
Sure.
Let's hope the conspiracy theories remain conspiracy theories, and that the Khumalo is okay. You understand?
Yes.
He will come back, to the chair of the witness box, but also the issue now of the delay, and this is the disadvantage, because they've lost a few days, and I don't know why didn't they have a plan, because this is not a court of law where you say this witness cannot come before the other one. I think they should go and have a plan in order for unforeseen circumstances. To have witnesses, the next witness ready or any other witness ready, in case somebody falls ill, understand? Then you can call in the next, maybe not on the same day, but maybe on the following day. Understand? So I think it will aid them.
Yeah, we can't be held ransom by one person's health.
And
when there's so many other witnesses.
When there's so many other witnesses, they should have planned it along those lines to say the next witness be on standby. We may call you. Need be or do other things that they've suspended them. But also there was quite a number of things that the Khumalo is supposed to come and present on in camera or in behind the scenes.
Okay, so basically it means what? It will happen in behind closed doors.
Behind closed doors, yes. You won't be able to hear that testimony because it's things that are still in the pipeline. Some are in courts. Some, he said, it will expose how crime intelligence operates, how they gather information, how they tap your phones. That's the kind of information that they're going to show, in responding to the text messages, how they acquired them.
I was going to say the text messages were rather explosive.
Yeah, and as you were talking about it, I thought of something before being explosive. In one of the testimonies from those text messages or WhatsApp messages, there was a part where Vusimusiket Matala was threatening Mokgotsi.
Yes.
And saying to Mokgotsi, I've made screenshots of all our conversations and I'm going to open the case. I'm going to go to the police. He even sent a letter. There's even a letter from Matala's lawyers when his contract was withdrawn. And he threatened them, said, I'm going to publicize them. You know what I'm thinking now? It could be Matala who actually had that file and leaked it when the heat was on. Because he had threatened. And the testimony of General Khumalo, when he was asked, where did you get this text from? He said, actually, we got this text from Matala's phone, not from Mokgotsi's phone. Remember, Mokgotsi is not under investigation. He's not arrested.
Yes.
So his phone is not confiscated. And there were screenshots. You see, and he had threatened before that he is going to do screenshots. So you can see that even Matala himself, he did not trust his runner, because Mokgotsi is a runner. He was a runner between Matala. I think the most damning information that came out from these two people's conversations is the fact that in some instances they were communicating with the chief of staff of Minister Senzo Mchunu. So that shows how deep they were within, the minister's office. And look, according to the witness, he says more damning information is coming out. This is just the tip of the iceberg, and it involves even the other previous ministers.
Sure.
And that's the worrying part. And shame, in the middle of this whole thing, the senior counsel, the lead, Advocate Motau, then decides to resign as well. And I listened to him in one of the radio's interview. Again, there was speculations. Again, there was, there was speculations of why is he leaving. I'm one of the people who said, here there's political interference. Actually, I was right. According to him, there is political interference. But in this instance, it's not a politician.
Yes.
It's the budget. He's lamenting about the budget. Pardon me, to say they were allocated 147 million. And he's the head, he's the leading person who must run, he must pay salaries, hire equipment, and all those things he explained. And he says, based on his experience in the two commissions he worked on, and looking at the Zondo Commission, where he was not part of, and the mammoth of the task he's faced with regarding this current commission, he thinks 147 million is not sufficient. And therefore, he doesn't want failures. I think he did two things. He is...
So, but then him walking away based on the budget is not enough. Is that him saying to them, I'm walking away because I see this thing's going to fail based on budget?
I think that's how I understood him.
Surely,
that's how I interpret him.
Surely there's more merit in trying to be solutions driven. That let's find solutions together, because I'm telling you the money is going to run out at some stage, but I am good for it. So spanning, and we'll raise money in the interim.
Or raise money if you get those guarantees. And me and you, we are now trying to be in his head.
Yes.
I think he did raise that, and they were like, it was too quick. And he said he tendered his resignation on the 11th. It was not abrupt and immediate. He said he tendered his resignation on the 11th of September. And you can see between the 11th of September and month end, when he finally called it quits. Clearly, for them to take 2 weeks, I think there was negotiations and engagements. It was not like, okay, we just accepted, bye-bye, you can leave month end. No. I think there were engagements. And when government said, we don't want the nation to be on our throats, we want more millions, we can't at the moment. But I think there's something I'm taking from Advocate Motau regarding this. I think, one, it looks to me like he's a perfectionist. He likes good, clean work. And when he realized that this thing is going to be shabby work, let me my name not be part of a shabby work. That's one part. And he didn't go and push and fight and say, but they denied us money. He doesn't want to be associated with that.
Sure.
And I don't think it's only money fresh. And I doubt if the state really wanted him to be there and he had started the work. He's exposed to what is in there, and now he's outside. You see the security risk of it. He's exposed and now he's outside. And he's a businessman. By the way, he's a lawyer. He may one day end up having to represent one of the people who are implicated there. Obviously, he will excuse himself. He will not accept that briefing.
Yes.
But it's unfortunate. And they were very quick to replace him with one of the former evidence leader in the Zondo Commission. But let's see. This commission has started seeing cheating problems at a very, very early stage of the commission. Let's hope it will be smooth sailing from now onwards.
Sure.
Because people making speculations, they did say, some people have said there's going to be deaths, there's going to be people going crazy, there's going to be people jailed, there's going to be assassinations, and there's going to be threats and all those things. But that comes with part of investigating a corrupt criminal justice system.
Sure. Let's wrap it up in the DRC.
Yes, sir.
Former President Kabila sentenced to death in a military court in absentia.
Yes.
How does this work?
Luckily in absentia, so he's still alive wherever he is.
Yes.
How does it work? Well, first of all, we don't know where is President Kabila.
Is he still doing his military course at WITS? Because I think he was doing a military course, course in military strategy or something.
It was. I don't know if it was military, but I think it was conflict strategy or something like that at WITS. The last time we saw President Kabila, it's about a month ago when he was interviewed in South Africa, and he said he's here for study.
Yes.
I suspect he's still here because the DRC government says they don't know where he is.
Yeah.
I suspect he is here. Now, if you don't know where a former president is, the question then becomes, where did you serve him his papers? Is it at the former residence in the DRC? But he left the country, and obviously he didn't leave the country jumping the fence or jumping crocodiles. He left it, but you should be knowing that he left. He hasn't come back. He left to where? To South Africa. Did you check with the South African authorities? Where is President Kabila or any other country that you may think is? That's the first part. But again, this was not a normal civil court or criminal court. It was a military court. So they used military tactics or processes.
At a diplomatic level, can the DRC say to South Africa, we want that guy, there's a fugitive from justice in your country, and assuming that there are extradition treaties between the DRC and South Africa, that the DRC can turn around and demand that President Kabila be extradited back to the DRC? Or is it one of those where I know that because of the South African Constitution, extraditions to death penalty countries often don't happen because South Africa does not have a death penalty. So if you're going to kill someone, we're not going to send them to you to die because they're not here to die by the hands of the law in the first place.
First of all, what was your question?
At a diplomatic level, can they demand an extradition?
Let's not use the word demand. They can request for extradition from South Africa because there's engagement. You negotiate. You don't just say send that person out. It's called a formal request to extradite a person. But you must have charged and demonstrated to South Africa in this instance, because we're using South Africa as an example, to say there's criminal charges or this person is facing charges, blah, 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 blah. And then South Africa, in receiving that, our international law at DELCO division, we look at the nature of the charges and what the constitution or criminal law or military law in the DRC says about the nature of the charges. In other words, if found guilty, because the charges were treason, rape, and murder. It was some of the charges that he faced. Now, if the constitution of the DRC says for treason and for murder, there's a possibility you will be hanged or executed, then South Africa will not extradite you because of the South African constitution or position, diplomatic position, international relations policy, that we do not extradite people to countries that have death penalty. If their case, it's clear that if found guilty, they will be they will be executed. We don't do that. So if he is in South Africa, he's in a safe haven, it was not going to work. But again, fresh diplomatically, it doesn't make sense to me that there's a peace process in the DRC that has been efforts of the UN, of the US, of many countries, including the African Union. They've been failing. And President Kabila, who was in power for, I think, 2 or 3 terms there, was succeeded by the current president. And he's also leading another political party. And you want to go and execute that person in a troublesome country. When you are entering into a peace process, you can't be executing people that belong to other parties or even excluding them from engaging. Then you're not looking for peace.
Yes.
You understand? There's 4 or 5 warring factions in the DRC. Is the government, is the M23 rebels, there's another rebel group, and there's other political formations, and of which Kabila is one is one. Now, you can't talk peace in that country if all the 4 or 5 people are not sitting on one table. Now we are in the middle of achieving that. You want to go and hang one or to execute one with a firing squad.
Sure.
And for me, that will not bring lasting peace. It may just worsen the situation.
Can we also talk about how farcical it is that you'd be in such a hurry to try someone in absentia and run to the death penalty? That almost makes a mockery of any justice system.
Yeah, but remember...
And almost exposes them for what exactly it is they're trying to do.
Yes. But remember earlier on I said, sadly also, it was a military court. It's not the normal criminal court of the country. But again, why would President Tshisekedi of the Democratic Republic of Congo allow such process? Are these people not enough? I don't say if President Kabila has done wrong, he must get away with it. But if almost everybody there has done wrong, because almost everybody there has killed. All the parties have killed either way or the other. And if you are looking for a long-lasting peace, and I will maintain that, and maybe the diplomat in me is kicking in, but I will maintain that, bring the people to the table, let's agree. Kabila, go and hold your horses back. By the way, he's been accused of supporting M23 and funding them, and he created them with Kagame, the president of Rwanda, when he was still in power, because during their term together, Kagame and Kabila, there was a little bit of peace, and they were working, they were getting along very well until Tshisekedi came into power and hell broke loose again. That temporary peace deal collapsed.
Yes.
But I'm of the view that you do not go and accuse people and charge them, sentence them to death in absentia. His luck is not in that country. They would have, I think, even the military will not hang you I think because the military is a firing squad.
Yes.
And I'm saying to the people of the DRC and the government of DRC, they are not helping themselves.
Sure.
They are not. This is not one person. You accuse one person, you send them to death for murder, rape, torture, and violence and treason. That man vacated this. He lost elections. He vacated
He
this.
conceded. He conceded.
Yes. So how is he treasonous now when he goes and form another political party to challenge you again in future? I mean, he's still young. He's 54.
Yeah.
You understand? He wants to challenge you in future. What's wrong with that? If your constitution allows that he can come back after a certain period, why not? And well, you can't call that treason when I decide to oppose you as my successor.
But isn't the treason where you are accusing me of supporting M23?
Yeah, probably it comes from that. That they are accusing me, but with the evidence that he supported M23. At the beginning, they said he formed M23, but is there evidence towards that? I mean, people said there's evidence in the UN that Rwanda backed M23 rebels. But the M23 rebels are in the DRC.
Yes.
They are still fighting even when we are talking. Why the government doesn't go and arrest those ones? Because they are there, they are armed. You understand? So you want an unarmed civilian who probably never used a gun in his life, and you want to charge him for treason and all that. But yeah, it's a sad story. You know, that like I said, they are not helping themselves.
Absolutely.
And I think they should be doing things a little bit different.
And we're done. Unless there's anything else you want to add.
No, I don't. What did I forget? There's a lot happened this week.
We've covered everything
We've covered everything.
on our menu for today.
Yeah, because the next thing, our followers will start complaining. Did you see that the one who was saying, hi guys, we think you must have it twice a week, a special one from Madlanga. That was one of the comments.
Yes.
And other people and our shows have been long in the last 3-4 weeks. We've been doing an hour and a half, so we heeded the call. No, they're saying it's still short. I think people are enjoying so much that they don't realize that at some stage we have to stop. Keleto will be knocking on that window now and say, guys, close.
Also, we are but human, aren't you?
Yeah, and it's fresh. I told you are, it's tiring me. I love talking, but no, I'm getting tired, bro. There's a lot happening. Then there's a radio.
We're getting you ready for politics.
Yeah, no, and the radio. I don't know. I'm actually loving the radio part because nobody sees my face.
Radio.
Except those, and you did say I'm going to love it, except those who watch it on the, what do you call it, on YouTube,
on
live,
social media,
live streaming and all that. But I'm enjoying it.
Where do we find you on social media, Botsang?
botsangm@gmail.com. That's my email address. 083-884-7787 on WhatsApp. And at botsangm on all social media handles. Fresh.
You can interact with the program. We want you to comment. We want you to like. We want you to subscribe. But most importantly, spread the word. Let's grow the family. Let's keep the debate going. Let's keep the conversation going, because it's only through dialogue that we all find each other, even where we agree to disagree.
Yeah.
Let's agree and disagree with respect and with understanding that because I don't agree with you does not mean you mustn't be heard.
That's exactly the point.
Absolutely. Thanks for tuning in. Another episode of WAW What a Week, #PoliTricks, coming to you from Discover TV in 4 ways. Discover TV, let them be your stage. Shout out to Trevor and his crew at Pezulu Works for the cinematography, and Kileso Mudisa, our executive producer. Most importantly, you for being a part of #PoliTricks. Until next week, have a WAW week in spite of yourselves. We're out of here.